second noble truth. And last week, I talked about the 10 non-virtuous actions. And this creates what we call non-meritorious karma. That's a long word, non-meritorious karma, or non-virtuous karma. This week, we're going to talk about the opposite. We're talking about meritorious karma or virtuous karma. All right, Bruna.
Ok. Então, agora eu vou continuar com os ensinamentos. Nós estamos falando da origem do sofrimento, a segunda nobre verdade. Na semana passada, eu falei do que chamamos do karma sem mérito ou karma sem virtude. E nessa semana, vamos falar do karma virtuoso ou com mérito. Ok.
All right. So, today we're being introduced to the 10 meritorious deeds of karma. So although they are meritorious, nevertheless, we should still regard all of them as producing further suffering and further karma. So whether we are creating positive karma or negative karma, we are still creating karma, and this karma will result in suffering. Maybe less suffering, but it still results in suffering.
Então, hoje nós vamos introduzir as 10 ações do karma virtuoso ou com mérito, mas mesmo se amando dessa forma, nós devemos trabalhar para cessar, para parar esse karma. Produzindo um karma bom ou produzindo um karma ruim, nós devemos parar, porque todo karma causa sofrimento. Talvez menos sofrimento, mas ainda assim causa sofrimento. Ok.
So whether we act virtuously or whether we act in a negative manner, we are still producing pain and suffering. And this continues until we realize the alternative, until we look at the phrases, until we look at the other end of the stick. That's an idiom. The 10 meritorious deeds, or the 10 virtuous deeds, are very simple. They are the reverse of the 10 non-meritorious act. So instead of taking life, instead of killing, we develop a respect for life. We try to protect life. Instead of trying to kill every insect we don't like, we try to find ways to protect them so they don't get killed. Instead of stealing, we practice generosity. So instead of taking things that we want, we become more familiar with giving. So in our sexual conduct, we practice sexual wholesomeness. I'll explain this later. And friendship. Instead of telling lies, we practice truthfulness. And we develop wholesome speech. Instead of intrigue and gossip, we practice straightforwardness, directness in our speech. Instead of harsh words, we practice wisdom. Instead of useless speech or gossip, we develop simplicity. We speak very simply, and what we say is meaningful. It's not just garbage that comes out of our mouth. Instead of wishful thinking and greediness, we have a sense of openness. Instead of destructive thoughts and bad feelings, negative feelings, we practice gentleness. Instead of disbelieving in pure vision, in what is sacred, we commit ourselves to understanding what is sacred and what is pure vision. So those are the 10 wholesome deeds, or the 10 virtuous deeds that we need to cultivate. All right.
Just one thing, Annie. The part that you said about instead of sexual misconduct, we have sexual, and you said another word that I couldn't understand.
Yeah. Sexual wholesomeness.
Wholesomeness, okay.
Yes, it's a very different way of using sexual energy.
Okay.
It's not just using somebody of the opposite sex to get sexual gratification. It's far more than that. I'll explain it as we go on.
Ok. Então, a Anne segue. Mesmo agindo virtuosamente ou negativamente, estamos produzindo dor e sofrimento. Isso continua até termos uma alternativa, até olharmos para o outro lado do cajado. Esse é um ditado que ela traz. As 10 ações do karma virtuoso são simples, são o oposto do karma não virtuoso ou sem mérito. Nós vimos na semana passada. Em vez de matar, temos o respeito pela vida. Tentamos proteger a vida. Em vez de tentar matar um inseto que não gostamos, vamos proteger ou tentar agir de uma outra forma. Em vez de roubar, nós praticamos a generosidade. Em vez de praticar uma má conduta sexual, nós praticamos uma forma de sagrado sexual, que ela vai explicar depois. Não é sagrado, mas uma forma diferente, que não é necessariamente usar alguém ou amizade. Em vez de falar mentiras, nós vamos praticar o bom discurso. Em vez da fofoca, temos o discurso direto, somos diretos no discurso. Em vez de palavras grosseiras, temos a sabedoria. E no lugar de ficar falando nada, falando coisas em vão, vem a fala com consideração, com pensamento. E no lugar da avareza, existe a sensação de abertura. No lugar dos maus sentimentos, há a gentileza. E em vez de desacreditar na visão pura, nós temos o comprometimento com o sagrado e com a visão pura. E essas são as 10 ações virtuosas que devemos cultivar. Ok.
Okay, I'm going to describe the 6 types of karmic results or karmic consequences that can happen. So the general idea of karma is that uncertainty, delusion, or ignorance begins to trigger like a gun, trigger certain mechanisms within our body and mind. So these mechanisms can be lust, sexual desire, or passion, or aggression. So let me say this in another way. This uncertainty, the delusion and ignorance, it begins to trigger, it sets off these mechanisms of lust or passion and aggression, which then produces certain karmic results. And these results are divided into 6 sections, which represent 6 ways of organizing our world very badly. So the first way is the power of volitional action. The second way is experiencing what we have planted. The third way is what we call white karmic consequences or white karmic results. The fourth is changing the karmic flow by forceful action. The fifth is
sorry, Annie. I couldn't hear
the karmic flow, FLOW, by forceful action. The fifth is shared karmic situations. And the sixth is interaction of intention and action. So it is quite predictable, since our world is created from passion, aggression, and ignorance. Remember, we are creating all our experience. So depending on the filters, the karmic filters of passion, aggression, and ignorance, then we will see our world in different ways. So we get back from the way we see the world, what we put into our vision. So how we create our world, this is what results in our experience, our present experience. It's not happening out there, it's happening through our karmic creation, the karmic patterns, whether there is passion, aggression, or ignorance present in any moment. And then this will result in certain experiences. So these things are happening constantly in that way. It is very steady and very predictable. What we put in, this is what we will get back. Yeah. Okay.
Annie, please, if you can just repeat for me the six types of karmic results, because at that time my internet had a click.
Okay, so the first one is the power of volitional action.
Power off?
The second is volitional, VOLITIONAL, volitional action.
Okay.
The second is experiencing what we have planted. So we're constantly planting karmic seeds. Some of those seeds are positive and some of those seeds are negative. So if we've planted positive seeds, then the results usually will be positive. If we've planted negative seeds, the results will be negative. So then the third one is white, what we call white karmic consequences or white karmic results. White, the color white. The fourth is changing the karmic flow by forceful action. The fifth is shared karmic situations. And the sixth is interaction of intention and action. Is that clear?
Sorry, the fifth one I couldn't hear. The fifth
one is shared, S-H-A-R-E-D, shared. You share something. And here we're sharing karmic situations. Okay?
Okay, sorry, the rain's too loud. Okay, thank you.
Now, I'm going to go on a bit. Don't translate yet. Okay. So, all these different karmic patterns, these 6 different karmic patterns, they are quite predictable because our world that we perceive now, it's created out of passion, aggression, and ignorance. So then what comes back to us in return is what we put into it. If we see things with aggression, if we react with aggression, then the results that we will experience will probably be seen through aggression. And if it's passion, then the result will be seen, the world will be seen through the filter of passion. And if it's ignorance and confusion, then of course, that is the way that we will see. Things are happening constantly in that way. Whenever we experience something, it is because of our input into the situation. If we have reacted with aggression, if we've reacted with passion, if we reacted through ignorance, that is what we will get out of the situation. That will be the karmic results. So in this way, it's very steady and very predictable. If you create positive karma, then you will get positive results. If you create a lot of negative karma, then you will get negative results. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that clear?
Yes, yes. Ok. Então, a Anne continua. Descrever os 6 tipos de resultados kármicos. A ideia geral do karma é incerteza, ilusão ou ignorância. Essas três começam a ser um gatilho para certos mecanismos na mente do corpo, que pode ser um desejo sexual, a agressão, e passa a agir com resultados kármicos que representam 6 formas de organizar o nosso mundo muito mal, de forma muito ruim. Que são essas 6 formas. A primeira delas é o poder agressivo, violento de ação. A segunda forma é experienciar o que plantamos. Estamos sempre plantando sementes kármicas, positivas ou negativas, que causam resultados positivos ou negativos. A terceira são os resultados kármicos brancos mesmo, de cor. A quarta é o flow kármico, esse desenvolvimento do karma, como ele flui. A quinta é a compartilhar reações kármicas. E a sexta é a interação da intenção e da ação. Então, é bem previsível como o nosso mundo é criado, pela paixão, agressão e ignorância. Estamos criando todas as nossas experiências. Dependendo do filtro que usamos, vemos o mundo de diferentes formas. Se colocamos paixão, o mundo será visto pelo filtro da paixão. Se colocamos agressão, será visto por esse filtro, ou a ignorância será vista por esse filtro. Temos do mundo o que colocamos como nossa visão. Como criamos o mundo é um resultado da nossa experiência. O mundo não é algo fora, nós criamos aqui. Essas coisas acontecem constantemente. É previsível. O que colocamos é o que temos. Se colocamos sementes kármicas positivas, temos resultados positivos. Se colocamos sementes negativas, temos resultados negativos. Vocês estão me ouvindo? Porque eu não estou me ouvindo aqui. Ok.
Ouvindo bem.
Okay, so, these are karmic filters on our perception. So imagine when you have passion, which is strong desire, then if you put that kind of lens on your perception, then whatever you perceive will appear desirable. So then you will act out of desire to try and possess it. So the result of acting out of desire to try and possess something also has a karmic result. If we put lenses of aggression on our perception, so then when we perceive something, it appears to be threatening. We want to get rid of it. It's the cause of our unhappiness. So then we will try our hardest to get rid of it in some way. We might have anger towards it, resentment towards it, whatever else, because that's the way we see it. We see it as undesirable. We see it as the cause of our unhappiness, and we react in that way to try and get rid of it. And then it has karmic results. We are left with the seeds of aggression. And when we have the filters of ignorance, we don't see clearly at all. We see in a very confused way. So then we don't know how to react to what we perceive. We react out of confusion. So all these different karmic filters, they make us act in certain ways. And then when we act in that particular way, then we have certain karmic results. Is that clear?
Yes. Então, a Anne exemplifica. Imagine se você está com um desejo, com o filtro do desejo. O que surgir vai parecer desejável e você vai tentar possuir isso. Isso terá um resultado kármico. Agora, se colocarmos o filtro, a lente da agressividade, podemos nos sentir ameaçados. Eventualmente teremos raiva com o que surgir, ressentimento, porque veremos algo como indesejável e tentaremos nos livrar daquilo e teremos consequências com isso. E temos o filtro da ignorância, em que não vemos com clareza, não sabemos como reagir com o que surge, então reagimos com confusão. Esses diferentes filtros kármicos nos fazem reagir de determinada forma, e isso tem reações kármicas. Ok.
All right, now we'll go into more detail. These 6 karmic consequences and ways of relating with the world around us. The first one is the power of volitional action. So the first type of karmic consequence is known as the power of volitional action in karmic situations. And this has 4 subcategories. So the first one here is a good beginning and a bad ending. So the first subcategory, a good beginning and a bad ending, is although the overall karmic situation that we enter, it might be virtuous, the result is negative. The traditional analogy here is that we are born as human beings and we are endowed with intelligence and the potential for wakefulness, but we may be born into bad circumstances. I'll give you an example. We may be born poor. So although we have great intelligence, we don't have any freedom to practice and study because we have to keep struggling all through our lives to try and get the basics in our life, like food and a roof over our head. So being poor is not regarded as something negative, but it creates many obstacles for us, all sorts of extra demands and challenges and pain. And if we are not very resourceful, then we may remain stuck in our poverty. We may develop what I call is a poverty mentality. It's never enough. We're always looking for something else. Okay, so you start off well, but then the karmic result changes, and you end up experiencing a lot of negative results.
Ok. Então, vamos para mais detalhes das 6 consequências kármicas. nas formas como nos relacionamos com o mundo. A primeira consequência é conhecida como essa ação. Eu preciso de uma, na verdade, gente, eu não estou conseguindo me ouvir aqui. Só um minuto, por favor. Escrever os 6 tipos de resultados kármicos. E as formas como nos... Vamos para mais detalhes das 6 consequências kármicas e das formas como nos relacionamos com o mundo. A primeira consequência, que é conhecida como essa ação que eu entendi como viciosa, mas... Annie, please. The first action is volitional action.
Volitional.
Volitional.
Volition. You know that word? You
No,
know that word, volition?
No, I
De
don't.
vontade. É.
Sylvia?
Volitional.
Yes,
Look up
yes,
volition.
volitiva, da ação, da vontade, volitiva, né? Da ação, da vontade, intencional. É assim que eu entendo. Volitional.
Ok, thank you. Obrigada. A primeira consequência é conhecida como a ação volitiva, como se fosse o que diz voluntária, como a Silvia falou. E não ouvi. Volitiva. Uhum. E dentro dela temos 4 categorias. A primeira seria o bom começo e o mau final. A ação pode ser virtuosa, mas o resultado pode ser negativo. Um exemplo, nascemos como seres humanos com potencial e inteligência, mas podemos nascer em más circunstâncias, como podemos nascer pobres. Então, podemos ter inteligência, mas não temos a liberdade para pensar, porque temos que trabalhar pelo básico na vida. Então, ser pobre não é negativo em si, mas cria muitos obstáculos. E se não temos recursos, podemos ser paralisados por nossa pobreza. Algo pode começar bem, mas por resultados kármicos e mudanças, podemos experienciar resultados negativos. Ok.
Yeah, we start off with the result of good positive previous karma, and we're born with this human body. That is considered to be the result of very positive karma, to have a human rebirth. But then the karmic results from previous karma create a lot of challenges in our life. So we don't really make use of what we've been given. We don't make use of this precious human rebirth. And then we end up with a poverty mentality that we never have enough. There's always something missing. So that's the end result, this feeling of something's missing, something's not quite right. Okay, now the second aspect is a bad beginning, but there's a good ending. So in the second category, although our karmic circumstances might be bad, we receive a good ending. And this is like being born in a rich family, or maybe, let's try and give an example here. We're born into a rich family, but actually this is a mafia family, okay? So it is a bad karmic situation to be born into a family that's involved in the mafia. However, although our life may be leading us towards destruction with such a family, we have richness and resourcefulness and the possibility of doing all kinds of positive things. So this subcategory is quite the opposite of the previous subcategory. Yeah? You understand, Bruna?
Yes, I'm following now.
Okay.
Ok. Então, o segundo aspecto, ele seria um mau começo, mas talvez com um bom fim. As circunstâncias, podemos nascer numa circunstâncias kármicas ruins e, de certa forma, recebermos um bom final. Como nascer numa família rica, mas da máfia. Isso é considerado uma situação kármica ruim, nascer nesse tipo de família. Mas temos a riqueza e a possibilidade de fazer muitas coisas. Essa subcategoria seria o oposto da anterior. Ok.
Okay, the third aspect is a bad beginning and also a bad ending. And in this subcategory are volitional action and what we receive from our volitional action, both are bad. So this is like being born, for example, being born in a war zone. It's like a hellish environment. There's always pain and suffering. And then we're forced to remain in that bad situation. We don't get out of it. So that's a bad beginning and a bad ending. All right, Bruna.
Ok. O terceiro aspecto é o mau começo e o mau fim. Essa subcategoria da ação volitiva seria como nascer numa zona de guerra, um ambiente infernal, de dor e sofrimento. E somos forçados a nos manter nessa situação. Não temos saída. Seria um mau começo e um mau fim. Ok.
Or we're born in an environment where we don't have food. So we're always hungry. There's never enough food all through our lives. So we're born into that situation, and all through our lives, we live in a similar environment, never enough food, never enough of the basics to live. So that's bad beginning and bad ending. The next one is good beginning and good ending. And in the fourth category, our volitional action is good, and what we receive, the result of this is also good. So then we have the opportunity to do all kinds of positive things in our life because the situation is very supportive to us. No matter what we do, the causes and conditions will support us to be able to accomplish our aspirations.
Ok. Na quarta subcategoria, na quarta categoria, a ação volitiva é boa, e o que recebemos, o resultado, também é bom. Então temos a possibilidade de fazer todo o bem na nossa vida, porque as causas e condições sempre nos ajudam a completar nossas aspirações. Ok.
Okay, now we come on to the second aspect, experiencing what we've planted. And the second type of karmic consequence is experiencing what we have planted in our karmic situation. And this is divided into 3 subcategories. The first is experiencing karmic results immediately. So when we begin to act aggressively with anger and passion and ignorance, then automatically on the spot we get our results. So it's like having a fight with someone and then you drive off and you end up in a car crash. Very immediate. I've seen this many times, even in my own life. I do something when I was young, I did something negative and then immediate results. Or, when you take something from somebody and then you lose something, whatever it is, there's usually some immediate results. Or you hurt somebody and then you yourself have to experience some kind of pain. Okay, so we're talking about immediate results. I think you may have experienced this, no, in your lives. I'm sure you do something out of passion, aggression, ignorance, and then very quickly you experience the result of that kind of action and reaction.
Yes, I have many examples of that. This happened to me. I'm just translated first.
Okay.
Agora vamos para o segundo aspecto, experienciar o que plantamos, que pode ser dividida em 3 subcategorias. A primeira é experienciar situações kármicas diretamente, rapidamente. Quando acontece algo, reagimos com agressividade, ignorância ou paixão e temos aquele resultado na hora. Por exemplo, quando temos uma briga com alguém e depois saímos ou batemos o carro, eu, por exemplo, tenho muitas experiências disso. Ou quando pegamos algo de alguém e logo depois perdemos algo. Ou quando magoamos alguém e logo depois somos magoados. Esses são os resultados kármicos imediatos. Vocês, e a Anne pergunta, vocês têm isso na experiência de vocês? Isso acontece com vocês? Quando agimos com paixão, ignorância ou agressividade, vocês têm exemplos disso?
Yes, I think we've all experienced this, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now the second subcategory is the karmic consequence that are experienced later. So they may not hit us until our next birth, when we take rebirth. Well, this depends, if you believe in rebirth or not, but this is the possibility introduced by the Buddha, that you may not experience the result of your actions in this life, but in your next life. I'll give you an example here. All my life, even since I was a child, I have had physical sicknesses all my life. And so I must have created some kind of negative karma in a previous lifetime to experience the result in this lifetime of no matter what I do, doesn't matter what the surgery is, what the medicine is, the results of whatever it is comes back again, again, again. There's no way out until I purify this karma or exhaust the karma that I've created. I don't know what the karma is that I created. You know, I may have been in a concentration camp. I may have killed many people, maybe killed many animals, created terrible suffering in my life. And then this lifetime, then I have to experience the results of all this pain and suffering that I've had to go through. Yeah, you don't know, but you did create at some time or other. You did create the karma to experience what you're going through. All right, that's the second subcategory. You may not experience the results in this lifetime, but you may experience it in another lifetime, in your next lifetime.
Ok. A segunda subcategoria é o resultado kármico que experienciamos depois. Pode acontecer numa próxima vida. Talvez você não acredite nisso, mas esse ensinamento é introduzido pelo Buda, que às vezes o que praticamos agora, o karma que criamos agora, sofreremos as consequências na vida seguinte. Um exemplo meu, por exemplo, toda a minha vida tive problema na coluna. Deve ser provavelmente algo que eu experienciei na vida passada, um karma criado na vida passada. Não importa o que eu faço, as cirurgias e tudo que eu já fiz, enquanto não exaurir o karma que criei, não importa o que eu faça agora. Não sei o que eu fiz, se eu matei alguém, muitos animais, eu criei muita dor por outras pessoas, eu não sei. Às vezes você não sabe, mas criou isso em outro momento. Talvez não experiencie as consequências do que está fazendo nessa vida, talvez experiencie as coisas do que está fazendo nessa vida apenas na próxima. Ok.
So, another example, as we could be born into an environment with many opportunities and situations, but somebody comes along and disrupts all that. So, for example, let's say you're born in Tibet. Then you get chased out of Tibet by the communists, and you end up working in a gas station in England or somewhere or whatever else. Or so you start off with what appears to be a very wonderful opportunity, surrounded by great masters and Dharma, and then all of a sudden something happens in your life and your whole situation changes, and then you end up in a situation which seems so far from the situation that you had earlier in your life, and you have to struggle to survive. It's all karma.
Ok. Outro exemplo é que podemos nascer num ambiente com muitas oportunidades e situações, mas alguém ou algo surge e acaba com tudo aquilo. Digamos que você nasceu no Tibete e seja perseguido pelo comunismo e acabe trabalhando num posto de gasolina na Inglaterra. Então começou numa grande oportunidade com mestres e Dharma, e aí a situação muda e parece que termina tão diferente do que começou. e você passe a vida lutando para se manter pela sua vida. Isso é karma. Ok.
Yeah, we just don't know. We just don't know what's going to happen in our lives as a result of our previous karma. So we may be doing a lot of what we consider to be positive actions, but at the same time, we experience many kind of negative situations, very challenging situations in our life, which doesn't really come from the actions that we created in this life. Now, the third one is the third major type of karmic consequence is what we call the white karmic consequence, refers to good karmic situations that are perpetually growing. And this has three subcategories. So the first is we emulate the three jewels of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. We continuously get good karmic results from doing that naturally and perpetually because we live our lives in line with the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. The second category is emulating and appreciating somebody else's virtue. And that also leads to good karmic results. And we could say a well-favored situation. So when we are inspired by somebody else's wakefulness, we are inspired by the qualities of an enlightened master, then we ourselves slowly begin to awaken to our own nature. And that is the virtue of influence, of being influenced by an enlightened being. The third category is practicing the Dharma. So even though our mind might be distracted, we're still practicing the Dharma. And due to the fact that we are sitting on our cushion and practicing, then we're not committing any negative actions. So we have a good karmic situation in spite of our distracted mind. Still, there are positive results. Okay.
Ok. A terceira são os resultados brancos kármicos, que tem também 3 subcategorias. Na primeira categoria, nós emulamos as 3 joias. Continuamos a ter bons resultados kármicos, porque vivemos de acordo com o Buda, Dharma e a Sangha. Na segunda subcategoria, emulamos e apreciamos a virtude de outra pessoa, e também vivemos boas aspirações kármicas. Somos inspirados por outros praticantes ou por um mestre iluminado, e aos poucos nos iluminamos também. A terceira subcategoria é praticar o Dharma, que apesar da nossa mente distraída, ainda praticamos, e pelo fato de sentarmos na nossa almofada e praticarmos, não cometemos ações negativas. Temos bons resultados kármicos, apesar da mente distraída. Ok.
Now, the fourth karmic consequence is what we call changing the karmic flow by forceful action. So let's say the karmic consequence is that at present we've ended up in a very bad situation. We can suddenly change the karmic flow with a tremendous and quite sudden and forceful effort. So we may have ended up in a tremendous state of depression, but we're able to make a jump in our lives and overcome that. We're able to change the flow of our particular lifestyle. So we might be used to being very lazy and sloppy, but sitting practice could straighten our lifestyle so that suddenly we become very tidy, very vigorous, a lot of energy, and a very uplifting person. We inspire others. So there are second thoughts happening each time you act. There is hesitation, and then from that hesitation, or there's a gap, there's a space, and then you can go backwards or you can go forwards. It's up to you. You can see there's a choice. And changing the flow of karma happens in that space. So the gap is very useful. It is in the gap that we give birth to a new life. And this is one of the reasons why I ask you to pause 20 times a day. Just stop and look at the flow of your mental activity. Observe what you're doing. And within that pause, it gives you a choice. Are you going to believe everything that you're thinking, the stories that you're telling yourself, or not? So it can bring about very positive results because there is that choice. You don't need to follow and believe everything that you're thinking at that moment. You don't need to act on the stories that you're telling yourself. So that gap can give birth to a new life, a new way of seeing. Okay?
Ok. Então, a quarta consequência kármica é o que chamamos de mudar o movimento kármico pela força da ação. Imaginemos que estamos numa má situação. Podemos mudar o curso do karma pela força da ação. Talvez se estamos numa grande depressão, ou podemos ser capazes de mudar o curso das coisas pela mudança no nosso estilo de vida. Talvez se somos muito preguiçosos, e a prática pode mudar nosso estilo de vida. Podemos nos tornar organizados, cheios de energia e inspirar outras pessoas. Isso pode acontecer no momento de hesitação. Na hesitação, existe um branco, existe um espaço. Nesse espaço, você pode ir para trás ou para frente, mas essa força de mudança acontece nesse espaço. É nesse espaço que a mudança acontece. Por isso, digo para vocês pausarem 10 vezes por dia. Nesse espaço, nessa pausa, podem questionar se vão continuar da mesma forma ou não. Nessa pausa, você tem uma escolha. Não precisa acreditar em tudo que pensa, ou seguir toda a emoção, ou reagir a toda a emoção. Esse branco, esse espaço, pode dar origem a uma nova vida, uma nova forma de ver. Ok.
The fifth is the fifth karmic consequence is what we call shared karmic situations. And this falls into two subcategories: the general, sometimes referred to as the national, and the individual. So let's change national into collective. So the collective and individual karma within the collective karma. So national karma or collective karma, the first category. For instance, let me give you an example here. You're born in a particular country where you always have to relate with what's a chain store in Brazil that everyone is familiar with?
C&A or chain store, any chain store like clothes or supermarkets like that,
Yeah,
big ones.
Anything. You mention the name and it's all over Brazil.
Okay.
Pão de Açúcar.
What?
Pão de Açúcar, the
Pão de
supermarket
açúcar.
chain.
Yes, pão de açúcar.
Okay, so this is what we're talking about. Collective karma was, if you mention this name, then everybody will be able to relate to it. Right? That's collective karma. Or I used to give the example of Flamengo when you think of a football team in Brazil, and you think of a famous football team in Rio, Flamengo, and everybody knows what you're talking about. But if you mention that in England, nobody knows what you're talking about. If you mentioned Liverpool or Everton or Spurs or something, then they'd know what you're talking about. Nobody in Brazil would probably know what they were talking. So collective karma is being able to relate. A large group of people is able to relate to similar ideas. So then, for example, if there has been a bad experience with a certain brand of car in Brazil, so then that will influence people from buying, will stop people from buying that particular car or motorbike or whatever it is, because there have been many accidents with that car, collective karma. So you end up in a certain environment or world, but you cannot totally blame that on oneself. The whole country is made up that way. The whole country sees things in a particular way. A lot, here we could talk about politics. How many people see things in a certain way, how many people are pro Bolsonaro and how many people are against him. This is kind of collective karma. How many people think he's good? How many people think Trump is good? And how many people think Trump is bad? Here you have a whole split in America. Almost half the population thinks, he's not so bad, he's quite good, and the other half thinks he's terrible. Collective karma. Now, individual karma within this collective karma, for example, if the sewerage system in your neighborhood is not good, that karma is particularly and personally yours in a sense, because the pipes keep breaking and costing you a lot of money and effort to repair them. Another example is you end up studying with a bad teacher who gets very aggressive because they are poorly paid. They get a very low salary by the school system. So on one hand, that situation is not your fault. But on the other hand, you end up in that particular school with that particular teacher. That is your personal karma. You have a television network, but you have your own personal TV, which you tune into that network. And you also choose your own particular station that you're going to watch, your own particular program that you're going to watch. So it's very simple. Environmental and individual karma complement each other. They kind of feed each other. So there's collective karma, and then there is individual karma or personal karma. I used to give an example in my teachings. I would say, okay, everybody look at the Buddha. Well, only the people who know what a Buddha is can actually look at the Buddha. Yeah? If you don't know what a Buddha is, then there's no way that you can look at it. But then when you look at the Buddha, how you feel about that personal Buddha, whether you like it, whether you think it's ugly or beautiful, whether you think its nose is too long and its eyes are not right, whatever, that is totally your personal karma. So there's always the collective and the personal karma that we are experiencing. All right.
Ok. A quinta categoria kármica chamamos de situações kármicas compartilhadas. E temos duas subcategorias, a coletiva e o karma coletivo e o karma individual dentro do coletivo. O karma coletivo, um exemplo, você nasce num país particular, onde sempre tem que se... Aí a Anne dá um exemplo, por exemplo, que é um karma coletivo. Se a gente falar Pão de Açúcar, nós todos do Brasil sabemos, ou um time de futebol, Flamengo, e todos sabem quem é. Mas na Inglaterra, por exemplo, talvez as pessoas não saibam o que é o Flamengo, e talvez aqui no Brasil o Liverpool não seja tão conhecido. O karma coletivo, ele é quando um grande grupo é capaz de compreender as mesmas ideias. Outro exemplo, se há uma experiência ruim com uma marca de carro no Brasil, isso vai impedir que pessoas comprem daquela marca. Se ela tiver muitos acidentes, isso é um karma coletivo. Termina num tipo, karma coletivo associado com um tipo de ambiente ou um mundo em particular. Aqui também podemos falar de política. Quantas pessoas são pró ou contra o Bolsonaro? Isso é karma coletivo. Quem acha o Trump bom ou ruim? Metade acha que é bom, metade acha que é ruim. Isso é karma coletivo. Karma individual dentro desse karma coletivo. Por exemplo, se o sistema de esgoto no seu bairro não é bom e os canos continuam quebrando, seus canos continuam quebrando, isso é seu karma. Ou uma professora que ganha mal e por isso ela sempre está irritada e brava na sala de aula. Essa situação não é sua culpa, mas você acaba naquela sala com aquela professora. Esse é seu karma. Ou quando escolhe uma TV específica e um canal específico em um programa particular. Algo muito simples e individual. Os karmas individuais se alimentam. Eu costumava dar um exemplo nos meus ensinamentos. Olhem para o Buda, eu dizia, olhem para o Buda. Somente pessoas que sabem o que é o Buda conseguem olhar para o Buda. Mas o que você pensa dele, se é bonito, se é feio, se o nariz é fino, se aquilo é legal ou não, isso é o karma individual. Ok.
So now we come to the sixth and final karmic consequence, which is interaction of intention and action. And this is divided into 4 subcategories. So the first is what is called white intention and white action. So the first subcategory is called completely white. An example of completely white karma is respecting our teacher and having devotion to that teacher, because that whole approach is related with healthiness rather than revolutionary thinking and ill will and resentment. So a lot of goodness comes out of it. So then what we call perpetual whiteness or positivity is created by our actions. The second subcategory is black intention and black action. So the second category is completely black. And this is like taking somebody's life without any particular excuse or motivation. We've murdered somebody or destroyed something that is completely black. The third one is white intention and black action. So the third and fourth categories are mixtures of black and white karma. So the third category is basically positive, with the good intention of protecting the whole. You perform a black action. So for instance, with good intention, with the intention of protecting the lives of hundreds of people, then we kill one person. And that seems to be a good karmic situation. If somebody is going to press the button on an atomic bomb and you shoot that person, here the intention is white, but the action itself is black, although it has a positive effect. Now, black intention and white action in the fourth subcategory, the intention is black and the action is white. So this is like being very generous to our enemy while we are trying to poison them. So it's a mixture of black and white. Although people are not generally 100% sane, they are worthy of our respect for their partial goodness, their inherent goodness. And it's the same as saying that we can't expect perfect weather. Instead, we have to expect the occasional sunshine of goodness in spite of the rain. Yeah, so sometimes there's rain and sometimes there's sun. So all 6 types of karmic consequence are arrived at partly due to our being in unsuitable environments and partly due to our own neurosis. So it's our intention to avoid these kind of karmic consequences. However, once these 2 conditions come together, then it's very hard to push against them. The only way to do so is by personal inspiration. to try and change one's collective and domestic karma. Okay, so here we really, yeah, okay, you translate that and then we'll talk about unplugging samsara, the last section here.
Ok. Então, chegamos na sexta consequência kármica, que é a interação entre a intenção e a ação, e ela é também dividida em 4 subcategorias. A primeira é a intenção e a ação brancas. A intenção é branca e a ação é branca. Um exemplo de karma completamente branco é respeito e devoção pelo professor, pelo mestre, porque a abordagem ela está totalmente voltada ao benefício. A segunda categoria, ela é preta na intenção e na ação. Intenção e ação negras. Seria tomar a vida de alguém sem desculpa ou nenhuma motivação, simplesmente assassinar alguém ou destruir. A outra, terceira, seria uma intenção branca e uma ação preta. Ela pode ser positiva pela intenção de proteger o todo. Então, você pratica uma ação preta. A boa intenção seria a proteção de centenas de pessoas matando uma pessoa. Para ser uma boa ação, isso parece ser uma boa ação kármica. Se alguém mata alguém, por exemplo, que vai detonar uma bomba e matar várias pessoas. A outra seria a intenção preta e a ação branca, que é, por exemplo, ser bom com o inimigo para envenená-lo. Então, existe nós não podemos esperar um tempo perfeito. Às vezes nós temos o bom e às vezes nós temos o ruim. Às vezes há chuva e às vezes há um bom tempo. Todas as consequências, elas são parcialmente também devido às nossas neuroses e às nossas questões kármicas. Nossas ações são para evitar as situações kármicas. Mas certas vezes, quando as condições se juntam, é muito difícil ir contra elas. E a única forma de mudar é a inspiração pessoal. E aí a Anne vai entrar na parte da mudança. Ok.
Okay, like today, I have this big bird come into the house. Do you know what it's called? With a very thin, long, green beak, and it can't fly. It runs very fast. Do you know what that is? Shigema?
No, I
Anybody
don't know.
know this bird?
Alguém sabe qual é o nome desse pássaro que tem um bico verde, grande?
It can't fly.
Tucano.
This bird runs on... Huh?
É um tucano?
No. It can't fly.
What?
This bird runs. It lives in the Brejong. It lives near the water. And it has, it's about the size of a duck, bigger than a duck. Anyway, it came in the house today and it was frantic to get out. It kept crashing on all the glass in the windows here. And then the cats saw it and the cats were about to jump on it. So then I had to hit the cats to get the cats out so that I could save the bird. Yes, so there was this white and black action. My intention was to save the bird, but I harmed the cat. I hurt the cat, to stop them from killing. So that's what we do constantly. We create negative negative and positive karma.
Então a Anne dá um exemplo dessa mistura que a gente está sempre criando karma positivo e negativo ao mesmo tempo. Hoje entrou um pássaro grande, que eu não consegui identificar, ela também não sabe o nome, um pássaro que não voa, mas ele corre muito rápido, e ele entrou dentro da casa e ele estava tentando sair, não conseguia, ficava batendo nas janelas e nos vidros, e ela tentando ajudar ele a sair, os gatos viram e iam atacar. Então, ela teve que bater nos gatos, machucar os gatos para conseguir ajudar o pássaro a sair. E isso é um exemplo. A intenção dela era ajudar o pássaro, mas para isso ela também machucou os gatos. Ganso? Não sei. Shirley asked if maybe the goose.
No, not a goose. No.
Siriema.
This is
Saracura.
yeah, that's what's the name? No,
Saracura.
Sirinemas
Siriema.
with the long
Siriema.
green
Siriema.
Siriema, that's it. Siriema. Yes. So a Siriema came in the house today, and it was really freaking out. It wanted to get out. And I couldn't open all the windows fast enough because the two cats saw it. And so I had no alternative but to throw the cats out quickly and try and save the bird. In the end, the bird went out the door. But yes, sometimes you have to act quickly. You want to benefit everyone. You don't want the cats to kill. You don't want the bird to be killed, but then, you somehow accidentally, you have to harm or hurt unintentionally. But the intention is to benefit. Anyway, let's go on. So the last section here today, the last part of the origin of suffering is what is called unplugging samsara. So, when we plug in the light, we plug it in, to the energy. So here we're talking about unplugging samsara, unplugging this karmic connection, this samsaric connection. Okay, to review the origin of suffering it's divided into two main sections. The kunjung of kleshas, the origin of kleshas, and the origin of karma. And this seems to be quite simple. The origin of klesha consists of the 6 root kleshas that we've talked about, followed by 20 secondary kleshas, and the origin of karma includes unmeritorious karma and meritorious karma, which, as we've talked about, this is divided into body, speech, and mind, plus karmic results. Now, in the Theravada, in order to cut the root of samsara, the strategy here is to unplug or disconnect everything. So we could actually unplug the refrigerator of samsara. It might take several hours to defrost. Nevertheless, as long as we have unplugged the particular refrigerator, defrosting is going to happen. So we shouldn't feel that we are stuck with these karmic situations. We should feel that we always have the opportunity to interrupt the flow of karma. So first we have to interrupt our ignorance. And secondly, we also have to interrupt our passion, our desire. By interrupting both ignorance and passion, then we have nothing happening in terms of recreating our samsaric world. We have already unplugged the refrigerator. Do you understand this analogy? You know, once we understand what we're doing here, then we know what we have to do. And so by unplugging the circuit, let's say the energy circuit, the samsaric circuit, then naturally samsara is going to fall apart, because we know what the origin of samsara is. We know the origin of suffering. So we have to unplug, not keep recreating the same patterns over and over again, but unplug, let go of these karmic habits and tendencies, and then slowly everything else will follow. We will be able to see more and more clearly what we are doing. So by understanding ignorance, that is wisdom. You don't look anywhere else. You look at the confusion, and by understanding the confusion, that is wisdom. That is the path. So we don't run away from it. We try to understand it and see clearly what we're doing. All right.
Ok. A última sessão aqui sobre a origem do sofrimento. Nós precisamos desplugar o samsara. Desplugar o samsara, desligar o samsara, desligar essa conexão com o samsara, do samsara. Para revisar a origem do sofrimento, é dividida entre kujong ou kleshas e a origem do karma. E parecem ser bem simples. A origem dos kleshas são as 6 kleshas raiz, e a do karma seria o karma sem mérito e o karma com mérito, isso dividido em corpo, mente e fala. Para chegar na raiz do samsara, a estratégia é desligar o samsara. Se fosse uma geladeira, poderíamos simplesmente desligar, e seria algumas horas para descongelar, mas primeiro precisamos desplugar, desligar. Temos essa necessidade de interromper o karma. E primeiro temos que interromper a nossa ignorância e a paixão. Se ignoramos interromper essa... Desculpa. Quando interrompemos nossa ignorância e paixão, então temos nada para recriar, não temos nada para recriar o samsara. Ao desplugar o circuito do samsara, naturalmente o samsara se desmontará, porque sabemos a origem do samsara, do sofrimento. Então temos que desligar, deixar ir os padrões kármicos, e aí tudo mais se desenrola. Poderemos ver mais claramente o que fazemos. Entendo que entender a ignorância é sabedoria. Temos que ver claramente o que fazemos, não fugir disso. Ok.
We're not trying to run away. We're trying to understand our confusion. By understanding our confusion, then that is wisdom. We're not going to find wisdom anywhere else except within confusion. Yeah. So one is seeing clearly and the other is not seeing clearly.
Nós não podemos fugir disso, fugir de olhar. Temos que entender a nossa confusão. Entender a confusão é a sabedoria. Um é ver claramente e o outro é não ver claramente. Ok.
So, ignorance is not seeing the true nature, and wisdom is seeing the true nature.
Ignorância é não ver a verdadeira natureza e sabedoria é ver a verdadeira natureza. Ok.
Okay, so that is the end of the origin of suffering, and next week we will talk about the cessation of suffering, or when we talk about the cessation, we're talking about liberation. And so I think understanding more about the details of suffering, I think it can be very, very helpful for our path. So we'll talk about the cessation of suffering, and then we talk about the path to the cessation of suffering, all the practices of meditation that helps us awaken to our own nature. Yes, so I hear that we have gone beyond 1 million Chenrezig mantra together. Thank you so much for participating. You know, when you heard the number 1 million, I suppose many of you thought, 1 million? We can't do that. That's not possible. But, you know, together, it's amazing what we can do. I would like to continue to accumulate more of Chenrezig mantra. I think it is so helpful, because every time you're thinking about others, you're not thinking about yourself. And that is really important. You know, when we focus on alleviating the suffering of others, we're not so self-centered as we usually are. We can see our self-centeredness more easily. So what do you think? Do you think it would be useful to continue with the Chenrezig mantra, or do you want to change to do something else? What do you think? No answer.
Eu vou traduzir. I'm going to translate. Esse é o fim da origem do sofrimento, os ensinamentos da origem do sofrimento. Semana que vem veremos a sessão do sofrimento e depois do caminho para o fim, né, do sofrimento, e toda a prática de meditação que ajuda o nosso despertar. E a Anne disse que fomos além da recitação de um milhão de Chenrezig, como é que pronuncia? Dos mantras. E aí ela pergunta se vocês querem continuar ou se acha melhor mudar para outro.
Yeah. No, you missed something there. I said that, you know, in the beginning, when I said, let's do 1 million mantras, and everybody, I think, felt 1 million, we can't do that. But I said, you know, of course, it's not what we think it is. Once we begin to do something and we're doing it together, it's amazing what we can accomplish. And the benefit of doing it can not only benefit ourselves, but others as well. We open our hearts to others, which is so important. When you think about yourself, you're not thinking about others. And when you think about others, you're not thinking about yourself. So we need more focus on benefiting others, and then it will help us to see more clearly. So I'm asking, do people want to continue with the Chenrezig mantra? And then we can accumulate 1 million more, or we can do Guru Rinpoche mantra, but I think doing some mantra every day is very helpful. And at this time, I think the development of compassion is really important for all of us. Okay, can you translate that?
Yes. So, a Anne disse que no começo, quando ela disse que pediu para recitar 1 milhão de mantras, as pessoas, vocês ficaram assustados, pensaram, nossa, 1 milhão, mas que depois, com todo mundo unido, rapidamente eles conseguiram. E como é incrível quando o que a gente consegue fazer quando nós estamos juntos, e que ela gostaria de ir além de 1 milhão. E que quando a gente pense no benefício que isso causa para outras pessoas, né? E como fica melhor, como nós conseguimos ir muito além. Então, ela questiona se a gente vai para além, se a gente vai para mais 1 milhão, ou se um outro mantra, o Rinpoche, ela dá como exemplo. O que vocês preferem fazer?
Bruno, you missed the point here. Let me say this again. 1 minute, listen carefully. I said, when we are thinking about ourselves, then we're not thinking about others. It's not possible. And when we're thinking about others, then we're not thinking about ourselves. Our heart is open. But when we're thinking about ourselves, then our heart becomes very closed, very self-centered. Me, what I want, what I feel, what I need all the time. So then it distorts our perception. We don't see clearly. Whereas when we think about others, the equality of all beings don't want to suffer. No being wants to suffer intentionally. Every being wants to find happiness in their lives. So we are working for the alleviation of the suffering of all beings. And I think that's really important. You cannot be thinking about yourself when you're thinking about others. And you cannot be thinking about others when you're thinking about yourself. So here we're creating more focus on others, which less focus on ourselves, which is so helpful in our practice.
A Anne diz que quando nós estamos pensando em nós mesmos, não estamos pensando nos outros. E quando nós estamos pensando nos outros, não estamos pensando em nós mesmos. Quando pensamos nos outros, nosso coração está aberto. Quando pensamos em nós, nossa visão fica distorcida, limitada. Quando pensamos nos outros, todos os seres querem ser felizes, querem encontrar a felicidade. E podemos criar mais foco nos outros e menos foco em nós mesmos, o que é muito útil para a nossa prática.
In order to understand emptiness, which is wisdom, then we have to have equal vision. That means we have to see all beings equally. And we can only see that when we recognize our own nature. Otherwise, we will always have friends, enemies, and strangers in our life. So it's, I think, so helpful for the development of compassion and wisdom to do the Chenrezig mantra. Emptiness and wisdom are synonymous.
Ok. Para alcançar a vacuidade, que é a sabedoria, vacuidade e sabedoria são sinônimos, temos que ver com equidade, que é ver todos como iguais. Isso é reconhecer a nossa verdadeira natureza. De outra forma, sempre teremos inimigos e amigos. E a Anne acredita que continuar recitando o Xerezing vai ser de muito benefício para a nossa sabedoria, nosso desenvolvimento da sabedoria e da vacuidade, que são sinônimos.
Okay, so what do you think? Shall we continue to try and do 1 more million mantra? Yes
People
or
on-
no?
Yes.
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 Yes, Anne.
Denise.
Sem isso.
Sim, Anne.
Yeah, I think if we do
Yes.
1 more million, then we will
Continua.
get very familiar with then we will be able to relax within the practice. If we can relax and maintain our focus, then we have the quality to continue with other practices. We have the right texture to continue with other practices.
A Anne diz que se pudermos relaxar, podemos ter mais foco para continuar para as outras práticas.
The relaxation and the focus. We have to bring relaxation through familiarity. We develop relaxation and we develop focus. So then the relaxation and the focus is the right texture we need for any practice that we do.
Então, através pelo relaxamento e pelo foco que nós conseguimos desenvolver qualquer prática que nós queremos fazer. Relaxamento e focus são a textura da nossa prática.
It's the texture, the basic texture we need to be able to do any practice.
Relaxamento e foco são a textura básica que nós precisamos para desenvolver qualquer prática.
Yes, then we can really be more present in whatever we are doing.
E aí podemos ser mais presentes, estar mais presentes em tudo que fazemos.
Okay, so do as many mantras as you can and send the accumulations to Sueli. Continue with the 20 pauses every day. Have the discipline. Remind yourself to pause. No particular time, anytime, just pause and look at your mental gossip. Look how you're getting lost in your fofoka mental. When you can see what you're doing, it's easier to let go. And you have a choice. I don't need to believe this. This is just a thought. This is just a story. I don't need to believe it. But if you don't have the space to see, you will automatically believe what you're thinking, and it becomes your reality. And then you will react on it, and you will create more karma. So we need to see what we're doing. So observe our mental processes in everyday life. When something is desirable, how do we feel? When something is not desirable, how do we feel? And when things are not going the way we want them to, how do we feel? Yes, observe those 3 reactions. How we hold on to things that are desirable, how we try to push away or change whatever is undesirable, and when things are not the way we want them to be, How do we feel? Look at our reactions. Yeah. So that's our practice for this week.
Então,
Also, 1 minute, also observe your karmic reactions in your daily life. Observe these 4 different categories or 6 different categories that I've introduced you to. And you will see your different kind of karmic actions.
Então, a Anne faz as recomendações finais, façam o mantra e mandem o número para a contagem para a Sueli. Façam 20 pausas ao dia, pause e olhe para a sua fofoca mental. Quando conseguir ver o que está fazendo, é mais fácil deixar ir. E você tem uma escolha. Pelo menos acredite nisso. Se você não tiver o espaço para ver, vai reagir e criar mais karma. Precisamos ver o que pensamos. Observe seus processos mentais. O que sente quando algo é desejável ou o que sente quando algo não é desejável. Observe as 3 reações. Como nos agarramos ao que é desejável, como rejeitamos o que é indesejável e como as coisas não são como gostaríamos de ser, como nos sentimos. Essa é a sua prática da semana. E observe as reações kármicas na sua rotina. Observe as 6 categorias que apresentei para vocês e vocês verão as diferenças das ações kármicas. Ok.
Okay, Bruna, thank you very much for your translation this week. You must be very tired. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes. I hope that Igor will come back and help you next week. But I know he's also very busy on his farm outside of Teresina. So, Denise, please find another translator to help Bruna. Maybe Paulo. Paulo,
Yes.
is Paulo free? Okay, ask Paulo if
Okay.
he can help. Okay. Love to you all. If you need to write to me at my Gmail, because my Facebook is really difficult. When I have a connection, I will reply. Okay.
Ok.
Love to you all and enjoy the new year. Love you.
Thank you,
Have a good
Anne.
week.
Thank you,
Anne.
Gratidão,
Obrigada,
Bruna.
Bruna.
Gratidão, Bruna.
Muito obrigada,
Gratidão, Bruna.
Denise.
Obrigado.
Beijo em todos.
Obrigado,
Boa
Bruna.
noite.